Let's get started with today's L10 webinar. Everybody, thanks for joining us. You have reached today's L10 webinar, Overcoming Market Challenges to Customer Engagement, sponsored by CMR Institute. My name is Tim Sosby. I'm Editorial Director for L10. It's my pleasure to welcome you today and serve as a host of our program. Let me do some quick housekeeping items, and I'm going to let the speakers take it away from here. We are planning a 30-minute session for you today. Your phones are on mute, so any questions you have, any comments, please do use that questions feature on the control panel there on the right side of your screen. Our speakers are going to put you to work a little bit today, getting you some feedback from you and some information from you. So please do be aware of where that questions feature are so you can contribute to today's program. Also on the control panel, I wanted to point out a handouts window. There's a handout in there you may wish to download. It's some information on the L10 2022 certificate programs. You can find out more information about you looking at that handout there. You can just highlight it and it will download it, it'll walk you through downloading to your desktop. And if you have any troubles with that, you can reach out to me and I can connect you with the handout offline as well. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available on demand in the L10 Self-Directed Learning Library. I'm going to share an email, or I'm going to share an address for that self-directed learning library later in today's program. And I'm going to send you an email about an hour from now with the link, about an hour after the program ends, with the link to today's recording. So one way or the other, through that email or through the address I share with you later, please do feel free to look for today's recording and share that with your colleagues. And speaking of sharing, as you leave today's program, a follow-up survey is going to appear in a separate browser window. Please do take a moment when you leave and let us know how you did. Share your thoughts with us on that survey. We produce these programs for you, so your feedback is always appreciated. And again, there's my email address. If I can help with anything around the webinar or your L10 membership, please don't hesitate to reach out. Okay, with all of that said, I'm going to turn things over to our speakers now. You're going to be hearing today from Michelle O'Connor and Kimberly Moon. I'm going to pass things over to one of our colleagues today, and they're going to share the screen from there. And while that's happening, I'm going to go ahead and welcome, hold on one second, there we go. Sorry, letting my computer catch up with me for 1 second. And now we go.
Okay, all set, Tim? Okay, wonderful. Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us today. Today we're going to be discussing 5 key trends impacting the healthcare landscape and how the development of custom learning pathways can help ensure that your sales teams are prepared to meet these challenges and effectively engage with their customers. And I'm delighted today to be joined by Kim Moon. And Kim, I'll turn it over to you for introductions.
Sure, thanks Michelle. I'm happy to be here, and my name is Kim Moon, Director of Marketplace and Account Management Training, and really the remit of our team is to focus on account management, building the skill set, but really as we think about the evolving marketplace, our role has really expanded as we continue to educate all of our sales teams on just this rapidly evolving marketplace. So thanks for letting me join.
Okay, thank you, Kim. So to start us off today, we'd like to hear your thoughts on the market trends that are most influencing your training strategy. So we've included some starters for you, but please feel free to type other market trends that may be influencing your strategy in the question box. So we'll take a couple of minutes here and tell us what's on your mind. What trend are you focused on? I'm not seeing anything. Tim, Sharon, Kim, are you seeing anything?
Nothing yet.
Okay. Right.
Hi, folks. If you're hearing us, we'd love to hear from you in the questions box.
There we go. All right.
Thank you. Sorry, we had a little bit of technical issues, folks. So sorry about that.
Yeah, looks like hybrid selling is a big area of focus. Definitely a hot topic for us as well.
Yes. Okay. All right. Well, let's jump in and get started. So the first trend that we're going to be discussing today is the changes occurring in the specialty market. So specialty drugs represent the majority of payers' drug spending, and payers are especially interested in how biosimilars may be able to lower their overall prices and also to generate cost savings. So as of April 2022, the FDA had approved 30 different biosimilars, and among those were the first interchangeable biosimilars, and one was insulin, and the second was an interchangeable biosimilar for Humira. So having an understanding of the specialty market and its complexities is really imperative for reps and account managers as pricing pressure continues. For example, payers may use tiered formularies as a utilization management tool to encourage the use of biosimilars. So let's take a look at various training approaches for this area. Kim?
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. You really touched very high level on just some of the key trends that we're seeing. I think the reality for anyone on the line that is currently in the specialty space, I think we've seen a huge shift and a lot more pressure happening in this marketplace. And really, as we think about what is helping to drive decisions, it's a little different than it was in the years past. And Michelle mentioned some of the, utilization management, things that the payers are doing to put a lot more pressure to control. So as you think about really building out your program, you do need to think holistically about some of the other topics. And I think these are just some great questions to ask yourself as you're either preparing for a new product or continuing to upskill your current sales teams. A lot happening, as Michelle mentioned, in the biologics and biosimilar space. And even if you don't have anything that is in a similar market, it's really important to understand, how physicians and customers are treating some of these new, biologics and biosimilars. Another key area, just education of providers, and whether it's your sales team or potentially your clinical educator team, how are you really taking advantage of some resources to help continue to educate your customers on what's happening in the market? It's a lot to keep up on unless they're continuing to really stay abreast of that. And the same is true with some of the practice guidelines. How do you really, make sure that the teams are effectively leveraging those and, referencing some of those evidence-based practice guidelines. And then I think the really key piece is that value proposition and, how effective is the team in really tailoring that value proposition. You think in the specialty space, the care team is very broad and there's a lot of people touching these patients, and tailoring that value proposition to all of those individuals, you really have to be thoughtful in how you do that. So I know we'll talk a little bit about, how you can do that. So Michelle, I'll let you kind of give an approach to the learning pathways.
Sure. Yeah, and those were great points, Kim. Thank you. So as you know, when you're responsible for creating training for multiple roles, it can be difficult to find ways to personalize the learning by role. So learning journeys are, they allow you to customize your training by role, experience level, and other topics, but they also allow you to take mandatory optional modules as well as learner guides, job aids, and more.
Yeah, Michelle, I know we've had a lot of great experience with some of the learning pathways that you've put together for us, and it's really been helpful. And you mentioned, there's a lot of different teams that you support, and really, regardless if it's the same topic, creating a learning pathway that's relevant for all of those different individuals has been really helpful. And really that co-creation and putting together topics that are relevant but very focused. I think we're trying to be very thoughtful of how much time we're pulling people away from training, so we really do want those topics to be relevant. So I know on the next slide we have really kind of a nice little overview of some just what you've put together for the specialty market. And I know I mentioned you might have teams that have a different remit, and again, customizing that pathway depending on how high level or how deep they need to go in a particular topic, or how can you continue to make sure that they're relevant. So you've got kind of those core foundational modules that really help establish that same foundation across the teams, but then really like that you've got some optional modules to choose from depending on really your remit and how in-depth that you need to go. So Michelle, I know you're much more familiar with some of the in-depth on the content, but just a high level.
No, I think you did a great job, and I think the beauty of this is where you can kind of mix and match and pull in topics. So, for example, if you don't have a product that might be a buy and bill, for example, that wouldn't be included, or it could be optional if you just wanted to learn more about that. Same with copay accumulators. Depending on your product, it may be impacting your customers much more so than others. So, just a couple of examples there. Okay. So the next challenge that we're going to discuss is recruitment and retention. And I think that, similar to virtually every other sector, every other business sector, the life sciences industry has also been in heated competition for qualified talent. And the typical hiring profile is also changing. And many companies are choosing to hire people with either no experience, straight out of college, or they may have just B2B experience. And as we've all seen over the last 2 years, training that addresses the new world of work with remote and team-based work is really critical. Companies are also recognizing the need to invest in career and leadership development to keep their new and also their experienced salespeople learning and engaged. So let's take a look at training considerations for both new roles as well as retention strategies.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. I know we talk a lot about you hear a lot about this great resignation, and how important it is to really make sure that your training program has the foundation, as Michelle mentioned, for the new hires. But really also more importantly is for some of your more tenured teams, whether you're new or 20 years, you really need to focus on development for these teams to continue, to leverage that as even a retention tool. And I know quite a few mentioned on the line the topic of hybrid and how important that is, and communication is really a key as you think about the digital world, and we think about how much information is coming at us, coming at our customers. How do you continue to double down in this area and make sure that whether you're in person or sending an email or virtual with your customers, that you have a very succinct communication. So really developing that skill set. And then industry knowledge is really important as we think about, new hires coming in, if they're not as familiar with the industry, or again, more tenured, there's a lot happening. The marketplace just continues to evolve and get more and more complex. So really, understanding what's happening. Another area, leadership development. I know this is a big area of focus for our organization. In fact, we have a whole team that focuses on leadership development and just the importance of developing leaders at all levels, regardless if you're trying to help, an aspiring leader become a leader. It's also making sure that we continue to develop our leaders to be better coaches. As you have satisfied employees, that's typically a really great retention tool. And then another hot topic is just diversity and inclusion. And whether it's making sure that we bring that front of mind for as we're hiring, but also even for your own internal training teams. I know what we've done is we actually take our trainers through a diversity and inclusion program. They're oftentimes the first people that someone is meeting. If you're new to an organization, you're really that first person that you're in touch with. So it's really important for even our training team to have, a similar mindset with that. So in the next slide, we'll kind of talk about just maybe some topics to think about. You'll see, again, the relevant industry knowledge and, the trends happening, how to even just navigating a physician practice. And I know you guys put together a learning journey for us. We had a lot of new people, new hires coming in without any industry experience. And it had been a while since we really refreshed some of just those foundational topics. And that has been a great learning journey for us to provide. Again, just to give that foundation, what's happening in the industry, what are some of the challenges, but even just the basics of just navigating a physician practice and how do you have discussions with customers have been, really helpful for some of those new hires. So I'm not sure if you have anything else to add, but those were a few that really kind of struck a chord with us.
Yeah, that's great, Kim. Thank you so much. I think the next trend that that we really wanted to touch on was hybrid selling, and that was a hot topic in digital education. So we know that that presents another challenge or opportunity in today's market. And I think while hybrid selling strategies have been essential due to access restrictions throughout the pandemic, we're seeing companies, that relying too heavily on those approaches may be counterproductive. So, for example, the in-person selling made a comeback in 2021, that continues in 2022. Of course, that can change as we've seen, and agility is key with the goal of maintaining quality interactions with customers. And that can be really challenging in today's market. So to train sales professionals to adjust their selling strategies to correspond with some of the market conditions, I think it's important to consider learning resources that promote critical thinking and strategic planning, and also strategies that help sales professionals engage their customers in deeper conversations focused on things like problem solving is really beneficial for both in-person engagement as well as virtual and in-person interactions. Kim, you want to go into that a little bit deeper?
Yeah, it sounds like this is a pretty hot topic out there, and same for us. We spent so much time getting everybody ready to have virtual engagements during the pandemic, and now honestly we're seeing that the hybrid approach, even as we return to these face-to-face interactions, our customers are still very willing to have a virtual phone call or video web conference, which is giving us more touch points with their customers, which is great. But I think the one thing is helping the teams as they transition and making sure as you are in this hybrid and seeing customers face to face, just having even those basic skills of good virtual presence. A lot of times they're taking it from the car. How do you make sure you've got a good backdrop, and how do you make sure that you're in a place that's quiet? But even just some of those basic things, it's a lot to navigate, even just the time management of it. And so really, we've tried to kind of take this approach of how good are they at the virtual selling? The key messages, I think that's another one to really reinforce. How do you make sure that you continue to leverage a virtual to open up doors and continue to not walk away from everything that you've learned, just being in the virtual setting. I think it's really easy to get back into face-to-face and only want to rely on that. So I think the other piece too is that creating that narrative and using the storytelling and continuing to help the teams, again, whether it's live or virtual, but how do you use stories to really bring your message to life? And then certainly overcoming some of the access barriers. It's phone and virtual are great ways to continue to try to make that part of your your strategy as you're approaching customers that are still maybe a little bit more closed down, or maybe have never really been open to industry. So I know the next slide will kind of go into some of those just more in-depth topics on and what a good journey could look like. A great sample pathway, I think one area that I wanted to call out is we talked a little bit about using the storytelling, but the empathy piece. I think we showed a lot of empathy, or teams really, were focused on a lot of empathy during, the kind of the pandemic. But the reality is, our customers are doing so much more with less, and the Great Resignation has really impacted them. So just understanding and being empathetic and getting your sales teams to really elevate that conversation, and really, that relationship selling. We can't forget about some of these softer skills that are really important that can really help the teams kind of stand out. So Michelle, I don't know if there's any other topics that you guys see as the most popular.
No, I think you covered it. I think it is really meeting customers where they're at, and things like empathy and understanding the market are certainly critical for sure. Kim, thank you so much. The next challenge that we're going to cover is key account management. So payers and organized providers the past 2 years again, have created significant challenges for both groups. And then I think specifically hospitals and physician practices continue to face unprecedented challenges with, loss of revenue, as well as, just the financial pressure that comes from higher staffing costs, as we mentioned previously. So I think, both providers and payers see 2022 as a time to re-engage in their population health initiatives. So this is an area where account management teams, I think, can really recognize partnership opportunities and create a competitive advantage. Additionally, many commercial organizations are restructuring or rethinking their structures in 2022. So as companies pilot these new commercial models, coaching the account teams on team building, agility, and resilience are going to remain top priorities.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. This is definitely a topic near and dear to my heart. And, as we see the continued trends and just the evolution that's happening, in the marketplace, the consolidation, key account management approach is really continuing to be one of the critical pillars as we think about, what's happening in the market. So whether you have an established key account management program or are starting to develop a program, really thinking holistically about, what is needed and how do you continue to get these teams to think, more strategically, bigger picture, and have a different mindset. And, even as you think about, taking some of your high performers and, in sales and putting them into a key account management role, it really does take a different mindset. So as you think about, building your program, keeping all of these key elements of just, business acumen and, how do you continue to get people to think bigger picture, think about the long-term sell, be more strategic, changing market, that is, a moving target, and account managers have to continue to understand what is, impacting their customers and what are some of the changing market conditions. And then same thing, keep some of their key challenges. And even as you think about, the key challenges could be very different across, again, all the different individuals, across some of these large, organized customers. And then thinking about kind of that competitive advantage, where does your brand or even account team have a competitive advantage, versus the competition? So just some things to kind of think about high level. But I know we're going to dig into just some great topics on this adjusted learning journey. I know this has been a good approach. Again, we have broader account teams that have different remit, and not all of them are calling on the C-suite, but they might have different pieces that are important for them to understand just the account management approach. And maybe they're not developing a business or account plan, but they do need to understand how do we identify those short-term and long-term opportunities. So just a couple topics that I think as we look at the broader, account teams or non-traditional account teams starting to approach more organized customers, these are really just hot topics for us.
Absolutely. And I think they are, and for many folks right now, because as you said, even if you're not a key account manager, you may be in a role where some of these topics are extremely important. So, and I think everyone is kind of landing in that spot right now. So,
yeah, agreed.
Okay, so the final challenge that we're going to touch on today is value-based selling. So given the financial pressures that customers are experiencing, it's really never been more important for sales professionals to understand the current state of value-based care. So many customers shifted their priorities over the last couple of years, but many have also, really kept their focus on value-driven initiatives. For forward-thinking payers and providers, staying focused on innovation and different payment models and care delivery has remained a priority during the pandemic. So it's really important, as Kim said, for sales professionals to understand what their customers need to be successful, both in the current state and in future value-based care arrangements. And this is where training can really help enhance your sales team's problem-solving skills, help them pursue mutual goals with their customers, which really is what it's all about, in creating those win-wins. So, for example, one example might be sales professionals who understand the key components of social determinants of health that their customers may be focused on and what their customer populations look like. They may be able to show how their products and solutions can help address these factors and improve outcomes.
Yeah, I know, our customers are really at such a major crossroads, and really starting to, see a lot more focus on, value-based care, and really, kind of these key topics. And, as you think about making sure that you've got, all of these taken into consideration as you, put together your programs, and, making sure do your teams really understand all these different value-based payment models. There's a lot, and, it could be very different market to market and even customer to customer. So really having a broader understanding. And then I think the important part of it is, discussing, how confident are the teams in discussing some of the clinical and financial benefits of your product, and it's how you position it versus how can it become part of a solution for them versus really, just about the traditional feature benefit. And same goes into, that perceived value of, what is important to the customers, what are some of their initiatives, and what does bring value to them and helping their patients. And Michelle, you talked about kind of the social and financial factors of, social determinants of health, as we look at the quintuple aim now, and that being a key part of it, how do you really make sure you're understanding what some of their initiatives are? So on the next slide, we'll kind of talk about some of those topics, because they're very relevant. And even if you have someone who lives in this space all day, or even just your sales team, maybe they're not really in some of these more organized customers, just understanding the basic terminology. Even if you're just going through the value-based care e-brief, do they know what a CPC plus is? Do they know what an AP alternative payment model is? Do they know BPCI? Just simple terms. The alphabet soup of value-based care can just be very confusing. So I like that. This pathway really gives some of that foundational, but then digs into some of the other topics. If you want to learn more about alternative payment models, and you identify what's relevant to your customers, it does then give them an opportunity to go back in and learn a little bit more about that topic, and then think about where can you provide some solutions that help them with some of their challenges. So I think this is definitely one, and I know it was mentioned earlier in the chat that this is another pretty key area of focus. And I will just put a plug in. It's really hard to continue to update content in this space. It's just ever evolving and changing. So we used to create our own content, but having a great partner like CMR has been very helpful, because they're always staying up on the trends and updating the materials. So this to me is one where this is a very valuable approach.
Thank you so much, Kim. I think you did a wonderful job of really laying out some of the challenges, but also some of the solutions that you and your team have been working on. So thank you very much for that. I know we are almost at the top of the hour, and we might have time for one or two questions. If anyone has any questions and would like to type them into the question box. Tim, do we have any questions?
Yeah, I actually have a question here waiting for us. Folks, if you do have any questions, please do type them in the questions box like Michelle said. Let me start with this one. By the way, a great presentation, Michelle and Kimberly. Thank you both.
Yeah, thank you.
So let me start with this question. How do you determine the content that is needed for different roles?
Yeah, so Kim, do you want to take that, or you want me to take that?
Yeah, I'll let you take that.
Okay. All right, so I'll use Tim's team as an example, but really it's a very collaborative process where we're digging deep into conversations that get to the need, the experience level that the reps may have, kind of what the challenges that they're facing in the market are, and then it's as I said, collaborative. We'll take the first stab at recommending a pathway, and then kind of go back and forth. So we find that's the best approach, really, is to take that needs-based analysis approach. So thank you. And Tim, I know it's 1 o'clock, so do we?
Let me ask one last question, folks. If you have to go, we're going to ask just one last question, and we'll wrap it up. And remember, I'm going to reach out to you shortly with the recording of today's program. Michelle and Kim, how do I sell this approach up the ladder to ensure sales leadership buys in?
Yeah, great question. I can take a little bit of that, Michelle, because I know a lot of times, that's what we have to do is, we have all this great training we want to provide. I think what we try to do is we tie it back to their initiatives. I think really identifying what are some of their key challenges as a brand or with the teams and the customers that they're calling on. And I think what is nice about this approach is it does give, much more consolidated bite-sized content, and it can be a self-paced journey versus pulling people out of the field. This is really kind of on demand, and they can, really do this on their own time, maybe while they're waiting for a customer. So I think that is a really important piece of, making sure you've got that leadership involvement. So great question.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay.
Sorry, that does bring us to the end of the time. So let me just thank you both for a great presentation today. We appreciate you joining us.
Well, thank you, Tim. And if anyone would like to, if they have questions or would like more information, please feel free to reach out to Kim or I, and or both of us, and we'd be happy to help. So, Kim, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate your insight.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
All right, have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.
Folks, I'm just going to pass it back over to my screen do some final housekeeping as we close out of here today. Let me make this slide larger. Just want to tell you about some L10 information as we closing out. This is a current look at where the L10 calendar of events is right now. This is an always changing document. We just had a mixer last night, for instance. I'm sorry, 2 days ago, for instance. But please do keep an eye on this calendar on the L10 website for most updated information. But you can see what's planned coming up here in terms of our certificate programs, the networking mixer we just had this week I mentioned. And of course, the big news is our annual conference taking place this summer, June 13th to 16th in San Antonio. Here's a little bit more about that conference. As a matter of fact, we've got a bunch of keynote speakers, training partners, expert-led workshops, and networking opportunities, speed coaching, plenty for you to do and learn at the conference, and we certainly would love to see you there. I mentioned the keynote speakers. Here's a quick look at who they are. Cindy Solomon is the founder and CEO of the Courageous Leadership Institute. Eric Bowles is a former NFL player, and Chris Waddell is a straight-up mountain climber. They all have inspiring and important stories to tell, and I know you're going to enjoy hearing from them. So let me end with one last invitation. I want you to join us for the next webinar. We're going to be back here tomorrow, as a matter of fact, for Next Level Metrics, Defining a New Value Proposition. You can see some other upcoming programs listed here. You can find out more information about all of these programs and register for them at l-10.org/webinars. Here's the address for that self-directed learning library. Today's recording is going to be housed in this library within the hour, and about an hour from now I'm going to send you an email with a direct link to that recording as well. And finally, there's my email. If I can help with anything around today's webinar or your L10 membership, certainly don't hesitate to reach out. So let me close out with final thank yous. I'm going to thank our speakers again, Kimberly Moon and Michelle O'Connor. I'm going to thank our sponsors, CMR Institute. And I'm going to thank all of you for your time, attention, and participation. Let me wish you a good rest of your day. Looking forward to seeing you at tomorrow's webinar, and we will talk to you all soon. Bye-bye, everybody.